Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for Friday, June 28th, 2019. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the latest film and TV news, and in the mailbag, we'll be reading some of your Toy Story 5 pitches. This is Slash Film Editor-in-Chief Peter Sciretta, and joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film Managing Editor Jacob Hall.
Hello, hello.
Slash Film Senior Writer Ben Pearson.
Hey, what's going on?
Not much, actually. There's really not much news going on. I think, a lot of Hollywood has the summer off, and especially with next week being July 4th week, just nothing much is going on. But we do have a couple news items to talk about today before we get to the mailbag. The first of which is Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. As you know, we've done a lot of coverage on Galaxy's Edge for the site, and Disney, I think, was preparing for the worst. Like, there were rumors that Disneyland was going to hit capacity for the first few months that Galaxy's Edge was open. They basically changed everything. They took a huge approach to how they were going to handle the opening of this land. They basically changed the way that the annual passes work, and basically made it so that annual passes could be blocked out for Disneyland and not Disney California Adventure. So almost all the passes, except for like the top of the tier passes, are blocked out for a lot of the summer of when Galaxy's Edge is open in Disneyland. And they also did a couple other things. They, I guess they were very clear in their messaging in like how this whole thing was going to be run, that the first 3 weeks of the opening of this land would have, you need a reservation to get in. You couldn't get in if you didn't have a reservation. And then after that, they were going to do these boarding groups that basically you would arrive at the park, you'd get through the app, get in line through this virtual queuing system, and through that you'd be able to enter the land when your boarding group boards. So they did that. They're also building this new parking garage to accommodate all these guests that they were expecting. But here's the thing. This week was the first week that you didn't need a reservation to go to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. And I went on Wednesday, and it was the emptiest I've ever seen it. I was over helping a friend, and we went afterwards in the late afternoon, and it was, when I had gone during the reservations, it was almost, there were lines for food and for stores. Here it was like, it felt empty. I have a video that I put online today on slashfilm.com and my YouTube channel, Ordinary Adventures, so you could see what it was like in Galaxy's Edge. But it was good for me as a person who was there. It was the first time I actually really enjoyed Oga's Cantina, because it wasn't like packed, and you felt like the cast members behind the counter were actually giving you good service. But I can't imagine Disney is feeling happy with this. They have unblocked the cast members were blocked out for the entire summer. It's so dead in Disneyland that they've unblocked the cast members from Disneyland. They sent out this email yesterday to annual pass holders, like announcing this new deal where if you're an annual pass holder, you can bring up to 3 friends to the park and get them in for park hopper passes for $99 each, which is like almost half price. So, Jake, what is going on here? Like, why is the park so empty?
I think Disney overplanned. You write this in the article, but I think it's a case where they built it in such a way to maximize the reliability of those opening weeks. And when things were opened up, I think people had heard the news about those first few weeks, how busy it was, how crowded it was, how complicated it was, and they all said, no, thank you. I'll come back in 4 or 5 months when the new ride is open. So they kind of shot themselves in the foot. It's a case of them, Disney, doing absolute right by the customers, and them actually building a system that would have helped the most people, but ended up scaring a lot of people away. And I think that similarly, that was the case with a lot of locals, but I think a lot of tourists from outside of California, myself included, looked at all this and said, I'm not going to Galaxy's Edge until the second ride's open. I'm going to wait till there's complete land, when there's more to do, when there's like the e-ticket ride is ready to go. So I think it's a combination of alienating locals and alienating tourists from out of state and out of country, people who are ready to do this. But I will say, it sounds like if you want a Disneyland vacation and don't care about Star Wars, this is the time to go because nothing else has a wait, right?
Yeah, I saw Radiator Springs Racers, which usually has, 2-hour long lines. It had a 15-minute line while I was there. Haunted Mansion was a 10-minute wait, which is basically a walk-on. I don't know. It's weird because, when I brought Brad to Galaxy's Edge and he wanted to get his lightsaber, he had to run. He had to be at the front of the line and run to Savi's workshop to even get in there. Like, if you weren't in there in the first 5 or 10 minutes, you weren't going to get a reservation in there. And when I was there the other day, people were just walking up and getting reservations. There was no line for the Droid Depot to make droids. We were able to get a Cantina reservation later on in the day. I guess reservations go on sale at 7 a.m. But strangely enough, even though, a lot of people aren't there, it's not packed, they're sold out of a lot of things. I know I talked about this on the water cooler, but there's half of the Legacy lightsabers are sold out. You'll see in my video that they've actually, one of the things in this land is they've said that everything in this land is in world, and none of the things in this land have the Star Wars logo or Disney logo on it. You are in the world of Star Wars, and so you're not buying merchandise that has branded logos. And one of the interesting things is they've sold out of all the popular Legacy lightsabers like Rey, Luke, Darth Vader, and to accommodate that, because they know people want to buy those lightsabers, they're selling the old lightsabers that Disney produced and used to sell in Star Traders that actually have the Disney logo and the Star Wars logo on the box and stuff. So I think that's gone out the window, which is kind of sad, but I guess
wow, that was so fast.
So much. The idea of I'd rather to be empty shelves and cheaper shit.
Yeah,
but that's just.
It is cheaper shit too. It's also I mentioned all the kyber crystals are sold out. Those are the things that you put in if you build a lightsaber. You can put it in your lightsaber and change the color of the lightsaber. They at Droid Depot. They are sold out of all the personality chips. So you can build a droid and then you put a personality chip. You have one of 6 is what they launched with, and that chip would change how that droid sounds, acts, throughout the land. If you encounter a first order stormtrooper, if you have a resistance chip in there, that droid will be afraid. So those chips are part of that whole customization, and they're sold out of all of them. They're sold out of the droid backpacks. At Oga's Cantina, they had this $75 beer flight, which is this collectible wooden beer flight, but the beers are sold in or you can drink them out of these Rancor teeth cups, and I guess they just did not anticipate how many people would want any of these things. But at the same time, it's not full. So what is going on? I don't know. I feel like they probably did some focus groups with some middle America mothers, and we're gauging the interest of how many people would buy a Rancor teeth flight or a lightsaber, and probably got drastically smaller numbers than they, were working off drastically smaller numbers than they actually, could have ordered. So who knows when they're going to restock all this stuff, but
Peter, here's my question. Has this ever happened to the Wizarding World of Harry Potter at Universal? Because the Hagrid coaster just opened there, and it had a 10-hour wait opening day, and Universal almost seemed proud of how big and crazy their line was and how people were willing to wait. And I've never heard of them running out of wands at the Harry Potter shops. So I feel like has this ever happened there? I can't think of a time.
I can't think of a time, but it is interesting that you bring up Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure ride that just opened up there, because that's been getting a lot of flack because it opened up, I think, what people are thinking it opened up earlier than it should have. It's been having some problems. But Universal did not really prepare any kind of plan like Disneyland. They didn't announce any kind of virtual queuing system. People, there's videos of people waiting 10, 12 hours in line to go ride that ride. And it's interesting that Disney did things the right way. They probably paid a lot of computer engineers and UI guys to develop this whole system of virtual queuing system so that people, they go to Disneyland, can get into this virtual queue and not wait in a line somewhere to get into Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. And it's only been used in the first couple hours of that first day of non-reservations. It's like, it's pretty insane that Disney went the extra mile, and it probably is what is preventing people from going to the park. What do you think, Jacob?
I think you're completely right, and I also think they should just not open with that Rise of Resistance, man. I think that if they had the entire land ready and had that massive, gigantic ride, the one that's next generation, the one that whose queue could suck up thousands of people, I think we'd be having like the instant blockbuster here. I think that when the system in place and when that ride does open, I think they'll be thankful for it. I think that in a few months they're going to need it, but right now it's a bad look. But I also think that maybe we can look at these first 4 or 5 months of operation as a soft opening for when Rise of Resistance completes the world.
Yeah, but it's also strange because I feel like this is hurting Disney, like hugely, in what the amount of money they're making with their park, because it's not like people are staying out of Galaxy's Edge. People aren't going to the theme parks in general. Ben, I'm wondering what your thoughts are on this, because you're not a big theme park guy like Jacob and I, and you don't have an annual pass. When are you, like, have you, all this excitement over Galaxy's Edge, I'm sure you're interested.
Yeah.
To go.
That's the thing is, like, I think I'm the person that that heard all of the noise about it and just decided, okay, I'm just going to stay away for a year or 6 months or something, because this is going to be too crazy. And just to hear that it's actually not crazy and might in fact be like an ideal experience to go now, of course, minus the fact that Rise of Resistance isn't open, is like so shocking to me. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's I guess I hope that, because you guys were talking about how like Disney made the right decision and they're being punished for it, but I hope that they realize that and don't take the wrong lessons from it. You're always talking, Peter, about how Hollywood takes the wrong lessons from everything. I hope that they don't, incorporate the result of what's happening here into future business decisions without, I guess in opposition to the decision that they already made, which was to do the right thing and to try to make this experience as painless as possible for its customers. Because the alternative of standing in line for 10 or 12 hours or something like you're talking about is just like the definition of insanity to me. Like, there is no way on God's green earth that I would ever be doing anything like that. But I definitely would visit and will visit Galaxy's Edge, and it sounds like now might be the time for locals to go and check it out.
Yeah, I should say that I don't know what it's going to be like on the weekend. Maybe on the weekend it'll be a lot more crowded, but on the weekday it was empty. It was really empty. I was shocked, because if you've ever been to Disneyland on a summer day, it's usually packed. It's crazy. Anyways, you can read my whole write-up on this and see a video of that visit to Galaxy's Edge, where I go through. And it also actually interesting, worth noting, when for the first few weeks of Galaxy's Edge opening, the build your own lightsaber experience, with that you are presented with these lightsaber parts, and you put them together into your own lightsaber, and then the parts that you do not put onto your lightsaber, like about half of them are not built into the lightsaber, actually go back to Savi's and stay there. And even people from my group were like, oh, I wish I could buy extra parts, and wish I could keep some of those parts that I didn't choose, so that I could choose to, change out parts later on or something like that, or, buy a part from another set. Now, apparently, as I was in Doc Ondar's, they started selling these extra parts. So I guess they have so little stuff on the shelves to sell, Jacob, that they're now selling, pieces of lightsaber parts that are not even in retail boxes to people. Which, I don't know, is honestly, I like that, but it's just crazy. Anyways, check out that video. I'll link it in the show notes. Let's talk about Comic-Con, because that's fastly approaching. Jacob, what is going to be there? What is not going to be there?
Well, we learned another name not going to be there is Sony Pictures is joining Warner Bros. And Universal in sitting out this year. And this means that as we're planning our coverage this year, it's very TV focused, because a lot of the major studios simply are sitting it out. I mean, Paramount will be there, and it's looking more and more likely that Marvel's going to be there, although it hasn't been like an entirely 100% official announcement yet. But Hall H this year, man, is dominated by television because everybody's sitting it out, and that means that Sony could have brought Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which opened shortly after Comic-Con. They could have brought Charlie's Angels, Zombieland 2, Morbius, Bloodshot, but they didn't, which is either a sign of Sony not having faith in their slate or a sign of Comic-Con dwindling as a presence for major motion pictures. And I think this is a case of a little bit of both, personally. All I know is that this is the first year in, goodness, a long time where we have a small crew going to Comic-Con because we feel like we don't need like the entire staff down there. Peter, how long has it been since we only sent 2 people to Comic-Con?
I don't know. 10 years? Maybe? I don't know. I think it's probably like the first year I went alone. And aside from that, we always have brought a bigger crew of like 3 or 4 people. So yeah, this is pretty crazy. They haven't announced everything yet, right?
Not yet. They're still waiting on a few things, but with each passing day, with each press release, we have heard from AMC and HBO, TBS even, but studios are being shy. I mean, the only thing Warner Bros. Is doing Scare Diego again, which is their pre-con horror movie showcase that we covered last year. And we know they're bringing It Chapter 2 to that, but that's not even part of Comic-Con. That's the Comic-Con adjacent experience. So I hope you like TV, and I hope you like hearing about TV, because we're going to have a lot of great television coverage for you coming out of Comic-Con this year. Game of Thrones has a Victory Lap panel. The new Snowpiercer series is off the top of my head. Amazon is pulling out all the stops and bringing out a bunch of stuff, like the premiering The Boys there. But it is going to be, hopefully, fingers crossed, it will be a more relaxed year, because I know for a lot of people going to Comic-Con is a dream, but covering Comic-Con and planning for Comic-Con can be a genuine headache for people who have to work it. So I'm kind of secretly hoping that things stay a little slow, so HT and I, who will be down there this year, can actually fit in everything and not have to, destroy ourselves. Ben, you have sworn off Comic-Con. How does this sound to you?
It sounds like the ideal version of Comic-Con for anybody who has to cover Comic-Con, to be honest. I think, ever since Scott Pilgrim had such a big presence there, and in I think it was 2010, and didn't perform well at the box office, I think that's been the defining thing, the moment that people point to as, okay, maybe studios have gone a little bit too far in spending a lot of money here for not that much return. And that was almost 10 years ago. And I think it's been a slow decline since then, with studios realizing that, like you said, that, this stuff isn't maybe necessary as much as it used to be. And then, of course, you've got like D23 and Star Wars Celebration and all these other opportunities for people to showcase their own stuff without having to compete in this environment. So, yeah, I think... I really do think that like you guys are going to have a nice, relatively relaxed time. I'm sure there's going to be some pretty crazy moments here and there, because there always is, double schedules and things that sort of like pile up on top of each other. But I think for you guys and for the readers, this is going to be a really interesting Comic-Con, because I feel like you're going to be able to cover a lot more stuff without having to be so focused on, I feel like there's going to be more room for exploration and discovery there.
Last year was interesting because there was only like one huge day last year, and usually you have a lot of people, like when you think of Disneyland, a lot of the people that are in Disneyland are eaten up in lines. They're in line somewhere, and Comic-Con's the same way. Usually at Comic-Con, people are in that Hall H line, or they're in Hall H itself, but last year they weren't. So the con felt last year like it was more packed than usual, because those people were not sitting in an auditorium. They were walking around San Diego and walking around the show floor. So it felt more busy. What I'm wondering is, are we seeing a different, we're obviously seeing an evolution of what Comic-Con is. And it's interesting, some of the panels they have announced, like the Russo brothers are doing a panel, Marcus and McFeely are doing a panel. Jacob, I'm wondering I'm wondering what you think of this, because could it be that like Comic-Con will become in the hands of like these producers and creators to like kind of, it's not about the studio and a film, but now it's about these guys, promoting their brand and their filmography that they're working on and developing.
You know what? I hope so, because as much as I enjoy those lavish studio presentations where they bring in extra screens and there's that big, like, rock concert environment going on, like Marvel 2 years ago where they revealed Infinity War footage was incredible. As much as I like that, you're still waiting in line for hours to be advertised to, whereas if you're going to a panel, I hope he doesn't have as long of a wait to watch two filmmakers discuss a movie you love, you're gaining valuable insight and not seeing a trailer 5 minutes before it hits YouTube. So I think we're definitely seeing that kind of shift. And we're not seeing a shift just with film stuff. I mean, this year's E3, the Electronic Entertainment Expo, Sony set it out for the first time ever. And people who were on the show floor said like it was far less crowded, there were far fewer major announcements. And I feel like both video game companies and movie studios are trying to realize that they can control the message in different ways. They can have their own conventions, they have their own panels, they can put something up on YouTube. Nintendo wised up to this years ago. They no longer have a huge press conference at E3. They put together a 30-minute long video they drop online during E3 and just enjoy the results because people get the same thing out of it. And I think the internet has fundamentally changed how people experience cons. So you want those experiences where you're going to be in the room with the creative, hearing them speak to you, because that's more valuable than watching a trailer 5 minutes early, which is what it's been about for a decade.
Interesting. Okay, let's move on to our last story here. One Day at a Time. This is a show that was canceled by Netflix, and it is alive again. Ben, what do we know?
Yeah, so about 3.5 months ago, Netflix canceled One Day at a Time after 3 seasons. This is a really beloved, popular TV show. It's sort of like a revamp of the Norman Lear classic from, I think, the 1970s. And Lear, who is like still alive at age 96 and still executive producing, is still involved with this show. And there was a big outcry as soon as it was canceled. I think we talked about it on the show. And now a cable channel called Pop TV, which some of you may recognize as the home of the another beloved TV show, Schitt's Creek, has now picked up this series. And I think this is the first time that a streaming show has ever been picked up by a cable network. For the longest time there, it was the reverse. It was network shows being canceled and places like Netflix swooping in and resurrecting them and snatching them from the jaws of death. But now the reverse is happening here. So a 13-episode 4th season is going to be debuting on Pop TV sometime in 2020. So that's the basic gist here.
Yeah. Well, that is good for fans of that show. I know I've heard a lot of good things. I don't think anyone on this podcast has watched this show, right?
I have not.
Not me, but I do have a question. I know the show has an extremely dedicated online fan base who got very, very loud when this was canceled on Netflix. But how many of them are going to seek out Pop TV and watch it? Because before it was readily available to anyone who paid the monthly subscription to Netflix. Will this move the needle in any way? I mean, is a loud fan base enough to get people to go to what is a niche network? I don't know. I'm very curious to see where this goes.
I was wondering about that as well because, like you said, the ease and of accessibility for something like Netflix is. I mean, we've seen this. We talked about it earlier this week when The Office. When the news came that The Office is going to be taken off of Netflix and there was such an outcry about that, people love the idea of just being able to hit one button on Netflix and watch all of this stuff. And the idea of for a lot of these people who are cord cutters, presumably, who don't pay for cable, now having a new season of the show go to a cable network, and then what does that mean? Are they going to have to subscribe to cable just for the show, or maybe there's enough there to get people to subscribe to cable again? But that seems like a regressive direction for considering all of the streaming services that are popping up now. So it's also
I think all three of us know how this is going to end.
What, the show's going to get canceled?
Yeah, sadly.
Well, the thing is, there's I think it is going to lose some of those people who won't subscribe to a cable channel, but it might be able to gain a different audience because CBS owns this Pop TV network, and even though the streaming rights for this show limit it based on the contracts and all that stuff, where One Day at a Time cannot be airing on any other streaming service for like several years, because of the way that the contracts are laid out, it can actually go to traditional linear networks. So CBS is going to be able to broadcast the 4th season after it airs on Pop TV, actually on CBS, like the main network. And Pop TV is going to be able to air the first 3 seasons of One Day at a Time on its show leading up to this new 4th season. So that will be an opportunity to grab maybe people who haven't seen it on Netflix yet. And if there's such a devoted fan base, then there's got to be something good about the show. So maybe they'll be able to pull in and sort of equal out some of those numbers. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how long this goes.
Okay, let's dive into the mailbag. A couple days ago, we were talking about Toy Story 4 and how that ended. And I guess now is a good time to say that if you have not yet seen Toy Story 4, you should probably turn this off now, because we're going to be talking about the future of the Toy Story franchise and what those possibilities are. And that basically involves spoiling the end of Toy Story 4. So you have been warned. Okay, so I asked for pitches for Toy Story 5 because I think I came up with an idea of like Andy as an older man wanting to reconnect with his childhood and seeking out Woody and Buzz to reconnect with his old collection of toys. We had a bunch of emails right in. I'm going to read a couple of them right now. Erick from Utah says the end of Toy Story 4 sets up the future of Forky and the gang. Forky meets the new girl Forky, and he says, quote, "I will explain everything," which directly leads into the Disney Plus show Forky Asks a Question in November. I think that little series will be popular. They could continue stories from there too. That is a good point. I didn't even see that kind of leads into that show, but I don't think that's going to have much other than Forky, and that show could be fun. James F. writes in, obviously the story for Toy Story 5 would be that the toys have become depressed and suicidal because all children want to do is play on their phones. Now, this is actually an interesting idea here, right? Because kids nowadays, I don't think they would be that entertained by a, Sheriff Woody doll. Jacob, do you have any thoughts on this?
Not on this one, but I do have my Toy Story 5 pitch you asked for, Peter, if you're ready for it.
Okay, pitch away.
Okay. It is 40 years from now. Global warming has devastated the world. Andy is now a grizzled Mad Max figure driving across the wasteland, struggling to survive. When he comes across Bo Peep and Woody, and since the world is over, they stop faking it from him. They start talking. Andy thinks he's gone crazy, and it's a buddy cop Mad Max story with Andy and his talking toys as they try to survive the wasteland. And meanwhile, we see inside Andy's mind where all the inside-out emotions are, and it ends with all the Wall-E people coming back to Earth to save the Earth.
When I asked Jacob to pitch a Toy Story 5, he was so reluctant. Like you love the end of Toy Story 4, right?
I think it's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, of course this idea is ridiculous. I would pay to see this. Jacob.
Oh yeah, I would too. This sounds terrible, and I would love it. It sounds like an Illumination project. But if they treat that idea dead seriously, if Pixar actually decided to cater to the crazies and say, yes, this is an extended universe where everything takes place at the same time. Man, that's the way to do it. You do it that way. You just make sure everybody's as miserable as possible. And then at the very end of that, in Toy Story 6, the Wall-E humans invent self-driving cars that kill them all. That's where the Cars universe comes from. It all works.
The Pixar cinematic universe?
Yeah, but it's all not in the order you think it is. I think everybody from all the other movies is dead, killed by the Cars.
Man, this got dark real quick.
It got really dark.
Peter, really quickly, before we move on from this, I think James brings up an interesting point here about the thing about all the kids wanting to do is playing on their phones. Yeah. And there's actually a Toy Story property that deals specifically with that idea. Well, maybe not the phones, but the idea of kids playing with modern toys. And that's a short called the Toy Story That Time Forgot, which is really great. I think it aired on ABC. I'm not sure if it's like readily available anywhere, if it was released as like a bonus feature on any of the stuff. But if you can seek that out, I would highly, highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun. It's only like half an hour long. I think it's 22 minutes. And it's basically about Bonnie going to hang out with her friend Mason, this kid named Mason. And she brings a bunch of her toys over to his house. And he has this video game console, and he's obsessed with playing this video game. And he gets Bonnie to play with him in this video game world, and they basically just throw the toys aside, and the toys have this whole adventure while the kids are playing with this video game. But eventually they get bored with it and decide to come back and have that sort of like tactile experience playing with these toys, and Bonnie sort of like teaches Mason about the glory of playing with actual physical toys instead of just being in a video game world.
Interesting. I gotta seek that out. I've only seen the Halloween special.
It's really funny too. It's Kevin McKidd voices this character called Reptilius Maximus, who is
this is one of the He-Man like characters, right?
It's kind of like that, but it's like a race of dinosaurs. It's like a dinosaur line of toys as well. And man, it's a lot of fun.
Well, I'll seek that out. Justin D also was on the same wavelength as James F. Justin D's from Dallas, and he writes in with his idea that it takes place several years after the events of Toy Story 4, and toy stores are going out of business, and kids are becoming more and more interested in electronic media instead of actual toys. Thus, the toys become more vintage and increase in worth. Bonnie, in the meantime, is hitting her preteen years, growing less interested in toys, and is playing with them far less. On top of that, Bonnie's parents are having a tough time financially. This seems like a lot of setup here, but okay. Having a lot of a tough time financially, and have decided to downsize. And then when Bonnie's parents decide that may be a good time to sell the toys on eBay, where some of them fetch pretty high prices. Some of the lesser toy characters get sold to different people, but the majority of the lot is sold to one lady. Meanwhile, Woody and Bo, while traveling with the carnival, receive a message from Buzz, who has kept up with them by reading up on the carnival on the internet, where the destinations will be. After Woody and Buzz receive the message, they decide to extract their friends before they can get shipped out to where they are being sold. Adventures ensue, and despite their efforts, they fail to stop them from being sent. Then they find the address of who they were sold to and go there, and it is revealed that the buyer was Andy's wife, and that the lot of toys bought were an anniversary present for Andy. Andy, of course, stunned that he has his old toys back, shares the stories and adventures of him and his toys with the now young girl. Woody, while tempted to join them, decides that visiting periodically when the carnival is nearby will give him an opportunity to watch Andy, his child, and their friends for many years to come. P.S. Toy Story 6 will be the gang trying to save Andy's marriage.
Man, that was so detailed.
Yeah, honestly, like, these Toy Story movies are written kind of like in these, like, they call it the sequence approach to screenwriting, whereas, like, normal movies have, like, this 3-act structure. Not that Toy Story movies don't have the 3-act structure, but they're written kind of like there is a goal every 15 minutes, and then the whole thing kind of shifts to something differently. Like, the whole thing changes, and I feel like this pitch kind of goes with that. Like, you know, them actually getting home and then they miss the toy, and, you know, like, it evolves kind of episodically. What do you think of this idea, Jacob?
I appreciate the creativity, and I really think there's a lot of thought put into this. I think that Woody and Buzz should never meet again. I think that them meeting in any capacity in any future film or short cheapens that goodbye at the end of Toy Story 4. So I'm gonna turn down this pitch, but not because it's bad, but because my personal preference is Woody has retired from that group, has retired from Andy, and is his own man now. Damn it!
But just because you're your own man, Jacob, doesn't mean you can't revisit with friends, you know, decades down the line.
Not when you're a toy who's scattered across the country.
Well, it's not like scattered across the country. Well, I mean, I guess he probably is because the carnival travels, right? Yeah.
Look, if I was Woody, I'd travel with the carnival until I found a nice climate, then I'd settle down there and wait for the apocalypse when Andy finds me in his Mad Max car. So,
Ben, any thoughts on this pitch?
I mean, just like Jacob, I appreciate the creativity. I actually think that the idea of Woody meeting Andy again in any capacity is like repulsive to me, because it would destroy the whole emotional ending of 3, and I think I think that part of his life is done. I mean, that's like the whole emotional arc that he goes through across all four of these movies, and to just drag him back into that world and those characters again, I think would be a disservice to him, unless there's some sort of angle here that I'm not seeing. But yeah, that's my thought.
Pixar has some smart people working there, some very creative, smart people, and I'm sure that this is not going to be the final Toy Story. So I'm sorry, Jacob, because I don't see this Mad Max sequel happening. But I'm sure there's going to be a Toy Story 5 at some point, and it's probably not going to be that. We do have
Peter. What caused the WALL-E disaster? What caused the WALL-E disaster if not global warming? And did Andy go to space? We don't see Andy up in that spaceship, and I feel like they would have put him there because you recognize him. Andy's clearly on Earth with the WALL-E. He's clearly surviving somehow with. Where's Woody? Always with Andy. And maybe there's a good dinosaur hanging about. Maybe the dinosaurs came back. I don't know. Peter.
Peter, you better end this podcast. Jacob's going insane.
Wait, did you just connect this with Good Dinosaur?
Yeah, that one takes place during the events of WALL-E, because the dinosaurs come back and they're a result of radiation. They're Godzillas, essentially.
Okay, I do want to end this episode. I know we've gone far over, but I do got to relay one last message. Bunny Hero from Toronto, Canada writes in that Ben asked if there had been any other unscripted TV shows based on existing IP when he was talking about the Mist TV series. There was a kids game show based on a computer game. Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego?
So. Oh yeah, that's a great one. That's like the perfect answer to this question. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah. So there you go. Okay, that brings us to the end of today's Slash Film Daily. You can find all of our work at slashfilm.com. You can find all the stories we mentioned on today's podcast linked in the show notes. Go check out that video from Galaxy's Edge. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google, Overcast, Spotify, all the popular podcast apps. If you have a question, comment, concern, feedback, send it to peter@slashfilm.com. We don't need your Toy Story 5 pitches anymore. I think we've gotten enough of those at this point. And please leave your general geographic location in case we mention the email on the air. And please rate and review this podcast on iTunes. Tell your friends. Spread the word. And we'll see you on Monday.